Welcome to another episode of Beyond Four Walls, the podcast that takes you into a deep dive into the world of real estate, property management, and the personal stories behind the professionals who navigate this dynamic industry every day. In today's episode, we have the pleasure of hosting Kylie Walker, the powerhouse behind That Property Mum. And Kylie has carved a niche for herself in the property management sector, offering a unique blend of professional insight and personal experiences that resonate with so many in the field, including myself. And Kylie isn't just a remarkable business owner, she's a devoted mother, an advocate for work-life balance, and a voice for the safety and well-being of property managers everywhere. And today we'll explore her journey, the challenges she's faced, the triumphs she's celebrated, and the wisdom she's gained along the way. So, without further ado, welcome Kylie. Thank you for coming onto my podcast.
Oh my goodness, thank you so much for having me. That is an amazing intro.
Well, I really appreciate you coming, obviously all the way from Australia as well, so time difference is a little bit tricky for us both, but I really appreciate your time. Can you share with us basically the moment that you decided that That Property Mum was going to be your next step in your career after your history, which we'll go on to in a bit, I'm sure, but your history with real estate?
Absolutely. So for me, that moment wasn't a great moment. It was actually a bit of a rock bottom moment for me. I was actually lying on my back in a hospital bed after having a 7-hour heart surgery. I had developed a heart arrhythmia called atrial fibrillation. It's normally reserved for people way older than me and way more unhealthy than me. And the only thing the experts could put down why I was suffering from this arrhythmia was because of long-term ongoing stress. And it was during COVID too. So I was there in hospital on my own, no family, no friends, nobody with me, connected to all these machines. And I knew in that moment lying there that I did not want another business owner, property manager, or working mum going through what I was going through. And that's how I come up with That Property Mum. It started out as a simple blog. I started sharing the challenges and the struggles that I was facing. And then it kind of just grew a life of its own. I started online courses, memberships. You know, I wrote an A to Z guide to property management. And now I've got a digital agency. I help property management and real estate business owners, with their social media posting. It's actually crazy to think back to where I started with that humble little blog.
Yeah, absolutely. And so in your experience, what do you think are the biggest sources of stress and burnout in our industry?
Well, I am the queen of stress and burnout, let me tell you that. And I honestly believe that the biggest sources are ourselves. We try to be, as working mums, as business owners, we try to be martyrs. We are generally the fixers of everything in our worlds. That's probably what makes us great property management business owners. But we all have a limit and a time where we need to put our hand up and say, hey, I need some help. I can't do this anymore. And if we don't do that, and I know you can relate to this as well because you've reached some critical points as well.
I have. Yeah. As you know, I had sepsis at the end of 2022. And to be fair, it still is a health struggle for me now. I have to really look after myself. And it's one of the reasons why I'm so passionate about looking after property managers, not just for their physical safety, but their well-being as well. Obviously that goes across all industries, but obviously I'm in the property management industry and I just want to make sure that everybody's, safe and looked after.
And we just keep pushing ourselves, and then our mental health, our physical health, our emotional health, all start telling us, hey, this is not okay. This is not right. You need to do something. You need to change something, or we're going to change it for you. And then you will get hit with a major illness or your relationships will break down. I had a relationship, my marriage broke down as well. And then of course the health issue as well on top of that. So there's no shame in asking for help. And the help might be that you just need some help at home, like a cleaner. Can you get I have a cleaner. I got a cleaner every fortnight. That made a big difference. I hired one of my friends' teenage daughters to pick the kids up after school for me. And she'd take them to all their afternoon sports and do homework or put the dinner on. You get to a stage where you're utterly exhausted and you just can't keep doing what you're doing, and you've got to seek out that help. And maybe in your business, it's getting a virtual assistant. there is so many ways that we can get help and relieve that burden and that workload that we only put it on ourselves. We don't need to be doing all the things that we are doing in our business and in our home lives. But for some reason, as women, I don't know if it's in our DNA and our genetics, but we think we've got to do it all, and it's like a stamp of, we can do it all. We're so tough. We're so strong. But the reality is, we can't do it all, and we are falling apart.
Do you think that there's a stigma, if you like, around women in our industry, that, or not necessarily a stigma, but that we have to go over and above to prove ourselves, and we have to do more? We can't just do the 9 to 5 because we have to be the best, and we have to raise our children, and we have to know everything at all times. Do you think there's a pressure from that side of things?
Yeah, and I don't think it's just our industry. I think it's women in general. I think that for so long, we've had to try and keep up with men. We've had to fight for equal pay. We've had to fight, to be able to vote, to be able to swim and wear bikinis and swim on beaches. And maybe that is something that is just ingrained in our DNAs, that we've had to fight to prove ourselves so long. So I actually started out years ago as a sports journalist. And there was no women in sport at the time that I started out. I'm talking 1997, 1998. And I had to work longer hours. I probably had to wear shorter skirts. No, I definitely did not wear shorter skirts, but I had to actually work longer hours. I was constantly proving myself. Most sports journalists would do 2 stories a day. I'd do 4 stories a day. So it is definitely that competitiveness, or that constant, I don't know.
It's like a worry, I suppose, isn't it? In the back of your mind, it's like a worry that you're going to be perceived as not enough or not good enough. That's how I started to feel, actually. I remember back when I was working for people, and they would say, "Oh, you're not ready for that," kind of like a pat on the head, and don't do this and don't do that, and don't wear that skirt. And I think I had one person say to me, "Don't wear your hair up because it makes you look too stern, but don't wear your hair down because it makes you look too pretty, and don't do this and don't do that." When you're working in an environment like that, you want to be able to continue to prove yourself. Well, actually, I'll wear what I want, but I'm really good at my job. So yeah, it's definitely a struggle. Have you experienced that? Obviously in sports journalism, you must obviously very male dominated as well.
Oh, absolutely. I'd be in press conferences asking questions, and, I'd ask the question, but they'd look at all the other male journalists. They'd never look me in the eyes and respond to me. Or I would be in dressing rooms. This is way back. And I'd go into the dressing rooms after a game, and I'd be interviewing somebody, but all the other players would be walking around naked in the background, trying to distract me.
My gosh.
Yeah, I know. It was just so childish and was not professional. And I had to fight really hard for it to be professional. And we do still carry that. We've got to constantly feel like we're proving ourselves, and we're not always judged on our ability to, be great businesswomen. We are still in a lot of ways still judged on what we look like, what size we are, and it's not even males. It's sometimes even women in our own industries.
Yeah, I agree, actually.
In our own areas, that we get judged by. But that also then comes down to us valuing us. We don't really need to worry about what everybody else thinks about us at the end of the day. We need to worry about how we're showing up, what we're contributing to the world, and that should be enough for us. And I can say, for me personally, I've always sought that external validation, and it's only in recent years, since I've done a lot of personal development work, that I have realized that it doesn't matter what anybody else thinks about me. I'm going to show up authentically as myself, and I'm going to deliver as much value as I possibly can, regardless.
I love that. I really do. And I talk a lot about the safety of our property managers, and I work with an amazing charity called the Holly Gazzard Trust, who I've spoken to you about before. They're only in the UK at the moment, obviously, but we can talk about that, bringing it to Australia. But as I said, the safety of property managers is really important to me. So there's a lot of lone working going on. To ensure their safety, what measures do you tend to put in place in your business?
Safety is definitely something that businesses in this industry need to take seriously. So for me personally, we've got an induction training around how to open up a property. For example, if you're showing a property, where to park your car, like really small basic things that people probably don't even consider, especially if you've got a young, early 20s, late teens, early 20s, trainee property manager. They wouldn't think about, where to park your car if you needed to make an escape quickly, or how to hold the keys as a bit of a weapon in case things did go sour, and never to stand in places in the property that's going to leave you kind of cornered. And probably one of the biggest things, though, that I say to people when they come into my business is just trust your gut instincts. If you feel that someone or something is not right, don't go to the property, don't take them through, or take somebody with you. Actually, we even have a code word in our office. So if somebody was to call up and say red folder, or can you get me the red folder from the back of the office, we know that that is a code word for that they're in trouble.
Wow.
And everybody's got to share in their calendar where they are and which property they're at, because you just never know. And I'm not sure if you saw the news in Sydney last week about that stabbing rampage.
Awful.
I know it is. And my son lives 200 metres from that shopping centre and spends almost every day there. So you just never know, and you definitely cannot be too careful. And I don't know about you, but I think online is the biggest worry. People know that you're going to be at this property as a woman, and it's not just women, of course, but women seem to be more the victims in these cases.
Yeah.
People can see online where you're going to be. Like, you're opening up a property at 4 p.m. You're going to be there probably alone. If there's any predators out there, they know where you are. So yeah,
absolutely. It's really, really scary, and obviously that the situation in Sydney, you hear a lot, don't you, about gun violence and that sort of thing in America, and to hear something like that for anywhere ultimately is horrific, but it's just not something that you would even imagine happening, certainly in a shopping centre or something like that. It's just awful. But you're absolutely right, we are alone a lot. And have you ever had any situations where you've been scared or frightened when you've gone to meet somebody on your own, or like if you've received any emails that have made you feel concerned or anything like that?
No, not in my real estate business, but I have had a stalker. I've been stalked. So
wow.
I had a neighbour that was stalking me, and it ended up quite bad. We ended up having a police investigation. I had cameras put in at my property. It was going on for probably nearly over a year before I realised I was actually being stalked, and eventually we caught him on camera. I didn't know it was my neighbour, but we eventually caught him on camera. But it turned out he was actually a rapist and a pedophile. So yes.
Oh gosh, I'm so sorry to hear that.
I know. So you just
horrific.
Yeah, you just never know, and you take your safety very seriously.
Yeah, just protect yourself, isn't it? And just gut instinct is, there's a lot to be said for it. And if you don't feel safe and everyone's saying, oh, it'll be fine, don't worry, if you don't feel comfortable or you don't feel safe, you get vibes from people, don't you? So it's a bit like, I'm not sure I want to do that by myself, or I'm not sure go into this property when it's starting to get dark or something like that. It's just not appropriate. But you do mentorship, don't you? Is that right? You mentor other women. And so have you had a mentor in the past which made you feel like, I want to be able to do this for other people? Or was it your health scare that pushed you into that?
I have always been a bit of a lone wolf. I wish I had a mentor earlier. I do have coaches now that I work with, and they have been, especially I've been going through a bit of a difficult period in my business this year, and they've been amazing game changers, such great, valuable support. I kind of grew up in a background where you just had to work stuff out yourself. I didn't know that, being so highly stressed and constantly in burnout was not normal. And I always had to work things out myself. So I've just gone along my business journey trying to work things out myself as well. So I didn't really have a mentor as such, but when I've experienced some of the things I was experiencing, I knew that I had to help other people avoid that destination of, being so chronically ill from stress that I had to speak out about that. So that's kind of how it evolved into me helping others.
from what I've obviously seen of you online, and we've obviously met in person as well, which is lovely when you came to the UK,
Was.
and I've been on your podcast, and it's been incredible. But you're an inspiration to me ultimately as well. All the way over in Australia, everything that you do and you suggest and you talk about online just really resonates with me. So, and I'm sure it's not just me. So thank you for doing that, really. So thinking back to you started in sports journalism and then moving into property, has there been a particularly challenging moment in your career that really stands out to you, but also one that you've navigated really well, and you feel like in a way you're glad it happened, because it, not that it made you stronger necessarily, but that it taught you so many valuable lessons? Is there anything that stands out to you like that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there is so many lessons, and I think business is the greatest teacher in life, and it is a roller coaster.
Hmm.
You are going to have many high moments and many low moments. But for me, leadership and building a team has always been my biggest challenge.
Hmm.
And something that stands out recently was so I came back from Christmas holidays in January this year. First week of January, I lost 3 of my team members. The second week of January, my mother passed away. By the end of January, I had lost 40 of my managements to 2 former employees. That's about $100,000 out of my business, the bottom end of my business gone. And I look, don't get me wrong, I was an emotional wreck. I was, extremely full of anxiety, felt sick, was angry, and, all the feels. But and in one particularly low moment, I just grabbed my pen and paper and I wrote down like 3 positive things that I can focus on. I wrote down, I focus on on growth. How can I grow my business? How can I regrow my business? How can I improve my profile as an investor educator over here? Being an investor educator is really valuable for your profile. And to do that, how can I get more publicity? How can I get on more podcasts? And so I just really looked at those 3 things, and I went and I've got 2 podcast appearances with major investor podcasts in Australia. I've got a huge media campaign coming up with the Tenancy Advocacy Organisation, and I've got 10 new clients this month. And, it's that thing, that mindset thing. We know when you dwell on all the negatives and you're bitter and you're angry, and you just attract more of that, more bad things seem to happen to you. Because we like to prove our minds right. Your mind always likes to be right. So if you're feeling like you're busy and, you've got no time, you're going to prove to your mind that you are super busy and you've got no time. But if you start telling yourself, I'm calm and relaxed, and you'll feel calm and relaxed. It's that same sort of thing. So I stopped focusing on the negatives, but focused on the positives, and they started to happen for me almost immediately. So that's probably the biggest lesson that I have learnt this year so far.
Yeah. I'm really sorry to hear about your mum, first of all. I mean, the thought of, losing my mum just makes me want to cry right now. So I've lost my dad when I was 23. So my sincere condolences. I'm so sorry about that.
Thank you. Yeah.
But on the flip side of the negativity, I guess, and learning difficult lessons, can you share a success story or a moment of significant growth, I guess, either with that property mum or with your real estate business?
Yeah, I think for that property mum, I sat on that idea for a long time, and it was my fear of putting myself out there. It was that, that imposter syndrome, that little inner mean voice that told me I'm not good enough. Who are you to do this? Nobody wants to hear from you. You're a fake, you're a fraud, all that, those sort of, we've all got them. And I'm sure many of you listening can relate to those little horrible voices that we get. So for me, it was just the biggest growth in that property mum was simply putting myself out there. I did a video every week for an entire year. If you go back through my Instagram feed, you will see those cringe-worthy videos. They are cringe. They are not polished. They are not perfect. But I made a commitment to myself to put myself out there every week for a year and did those videos. Consistency and showing up, I saw major growth in my online presence. It gave me confidence. people started interacting and engaging with me. I knew I was hitting that. I was resonating with people. I was talking to their problems as well. And I was hopefully helping with some solutions as well. So just putting yourself out there sometimes is the biggest growth that you will achieve, I personally think.
Yeah, definitely. I'll have to go back and watch all your videos now you've said that.
They are cringe, but I haven't been back and watched them for a long time. But
Well,
but I hope that answered your question. I kind of digressed a bit, but
no, not at all, not at all. It's a funny one, isn't it? Because the industry can be quite really difficult at times, and trying to keep people happy and everything all the time. So in terms of conflict resolution and dealing with either difficult tenants or difficult staff members, I guess, as well, do you have a particular approach to conflict resolution? I guess in a way it depends on the situation and it depends on the person of how you deal with it. But if you've got any advice of how to deal with conflict?
Absolutely. I was absolutely terrible at conflict. I was so emotionally unintelligent. I am the person that would fly off the handle. I would blame everybody else. And I didn't listen. And you're right, though, like what you said, leading into that question, property management is so negative. Everyone calls up, my toilet's leaking, my window's broken, the neighbours are too loud, my rent wasn't paid on time. Why did you pay that bill for me? No one ever calls up and says, thank you so much for getting me an amazing tenant, maintaining my property, increasing my rental returns. It is very, very negative, and you can get caught up in just like I said, your mind likes to be right. If you're constantly dealing with negativity, you're going to keep searching out that negativity in everything. So the first thing I want to say about conflict and disputes and that sort of thing is never make it about you. Unless you're doing a really bad job, then of course it is about you. And you need to go, okay, I'm doing a really crap job here. Maybe I'm in the wrong business. Usually it's something that is going on in somebody else's life, right? It could be financial troubles. Most of the time for investors, it's financial troubles. Interest rates have gone too high. They can't meet their mortgage repayments. There's major maintenance. They're struggling. Maybe their marriages are breaking down. Their relationships are breaking down. Maybe their jobs are really stressful as well, and they on tender hooks. So it's really important to remember that if somebody is angry at you, it's not necessarily about you unless you've done a crappy job. Biggest part or lesson that I have learned is just to listen. Clients and people just want to be heard. They want to vent and say all the crappy things that have happened. Just let them dump. Let them dump on, and again, it's not about you. Just let them dump. And half the time it's actually not even your issue. It's something completely irrelevant. Secondly, then just show a bit of empathy. I'm really sorry you feel like that. That's really terrible. Validate their feelings. You must feel really crappy about that. They must have been really uncomfortable, painful, whatever. And then finally, just come up with a solution. Okay, so what we're going to do moving forward is we're going to get, 3 quotes. We're going to sort this out. We're going to take care of this for you. Have that solution there for people. And if you're not taking it personally and not responding to them dumping, let them talk and vent. I always just sit there and think, right, how am I going to solve this? I don't even listen to half the stuff they say. So listen, show empathy, and find solutions, and you won't have a problem with conflict.
It's really difficult balance, isn't it? Because if you've got somebody saying, I don't want you to pay that bill, and I always want you to get 3 quotes and then in the middle of that, you've got contractor availability. If you've got to get 3 quotes, you could be waiting weeks to get those quotes in. In the meantime, the tenant is struggling with a leaking toilet or a broken window, as you said. So you've got to balance all of it, keep everybody happy, and look after yourself at the same time. And it's a bit of madness, really, isn't it?
It is. And I think for me, one of the things I teach with conflict is you've got to go back, and like Australia is very heavily legislated, and I know there's a few gaps in the legislation for you guys, but in those situations, I always go back to the legislation and say, okay, in Australia, like a leaking toilet's basically an emergency maintenance. We don't even have to go to the owners anymore. We've got approval by legislation to go and get that fixed immediately. Okay. So you'd go and get that. You just go get that fixed. Hey, and tell the property owner after the fact. But I know that's not the same in all areas. But always, if you can, go back to what is actually the law, because people can't dispute with the law. That is the law. If we don't get this done, the consequences are you're going to get sued. It's going to cost you a lot of money. There's going to be litigation, whatever, and go back to that. Or I also like to put it, Mr. Landlord, property owner, what if that was your son or daughter in that situation? How would you feel if they were living in a property that had no heating for the entire winter? And that then makes them step into their empathy side of things.
Yeah.
And sometimes can I swear on this? I'm not sure if I can swear.
You can, yeah.
Yep. Sometimes you're going to get dickheads.
Yeah.
And there is just no reasoning with people like that, or crazies. I like to call them crazies. Mm-hmm. There is, and that's on both ends of the spectrum, from the owners to the tenants. You're going to get crazies, and you cannot reason with crazies. And you've just got to either let that property go and just walk away from it, or get rid of that tenant as quickly as you possibly can, because they end up just sucking the energy out of you, and there is no reasoning with them. There is no way that you can listen to them, because you'll end up as crazy as them if you continually listen to them. And I know you're probably thinking of the people I'm talking about right now. They're missing all those social cues that we all take for granted. They don't have them, so let them go.
Yeah, definitely. I actually, for me and my team, or how I explain to my team, actually going back to legislation or the terms of the lease, or what is literally written down in law, as you say, that can actually help with the crazy situation, or the uncomfortable conversations that you have to have, because they can rant and shout and everything at you all day long, but actually the law is X, Y, and Z. So it is what it is. So in some ways, I suppose they might actually be easier to deal with, apart from the abuse you get, obviously. That's not easy on you personally, but to actually deal with your day-to-day job, because you can refer back to the law, ultimately, it's sometimes easier to be like, no, this is it, black and white, sorry.
Yeah, I actually had the situation today. I had a tenant call up. Our receptionist went home early, and I was answering calls. I had a lady called up, and so two things. She's vacating the property. It's meant to be on Monday, but she's leaving tomorrow, and she wanted to leave the keys in the property or in the meter box. And I said, look, I'm really sorry if it was, no one's going to be able to pick them up over the weekend. You really need to get them back to our office. And she's like, but I'm leaving tomorrow. And I'm like, well, can you drop them in today? I'll stay back. What time can you get here today? No, I can't. Can you get a family friend to drop them off on Monday? No, I don't have any friends. They're your two options. I'm sorry. You cannot leave them in the property, and you can't leave them in the meter box. Argued the point. And I said, no, that's it. That's your two options. I'm sorry. I'm working with you here. And she said, what else do I need to do to finish up in the property? I said, well, you need to have professional carpet cleaning done. She says, no, I don't. As long as they look like they're professionally cleaned. I'm like, okay, well, we'll be the judge of that. Secondly, you've got cats, you need to make sure that there is a pest control flea treatment done. And she's like, my cats don't have fleas. I hope they don't, and I'm glad that they don't, but it is legislation that you have to have a pest control flea treatment done if you've got pets in the property. No, I don't. Yes, it is. Would you like me to send you through the legislation that says that? You've actually also signed a pet agreement that says that when you leave the property, you'll have a flea treatment done. She still argued with me, but I said, that's it. You've got to have it done, or I'm going to take it out of your bond. People, like, I had that two things today. Yeah. I was like tearing my hair out. Oh.
Yeah, anyway. It's crazy. But there's a lot of misconceptions, I think, around what we do. If you're an estate agent, if you're a letting agent, if you're in block management, which is what I do. Is it called strata management in Australia? Is that right?
Strata management, yep.
So there's a lot of misconceptions around property management, but is there any particular misconceptions that you might want to put to bed, if you like, and just state the facts? Is there anything that you can think of?
One of the things that I think property managers get caught up in saying all the time is that they're so busy. It is a busy job. I mean, lots of people's jobs are busy. We're not operating on, saving lives. It is a busy job, but there are ways to manage our time. And again, we've got to stop saying that, using I'm so busy. We all are busy. I've got no time, So I think that is a bit of a shift. It's
it's like a misunderstanding, I guess, isn't it? if you say you're busy all of the time, people don't feel valued, maybe. I know I had a situation where I knew that I had meeting after meeting after meeting for about 3 days. Then I was on a going to a conference, and then I think there was something else going on. Anyway, the week was insane. So I put an out of office on to say I am working. However, I've got this, and this. I thought I worded it quite nicely, but it didn't go down very well with one particular client because she sent me an email basically saying, clearly you're too busy to speak to me, blah, 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 blah. And I was like, well, actually, I was quite concise with what I'd put. I thought I was communicating well,
Yeah,
that,
absolutely.
my week, I am working this week, but my week is quite busy because of X, Y, and Z. I'm sorry that, that was a misconception or a misunderstanding from your point of view, potentially. Sometimes you just can't do right for doing wrong, can you? It's just whatever you do is wrong to some people. But yeah, going along those lines of I'm busy, I'm busy, I'm busy. I guess we have to think of how that's perceived, maybe from other people.
And you're right, communication is the key. Putting those auto replies when you are out of office, but also giving people expectations, because everybody expects that instant response now. We're all looking for an immediate reply, but giving them those expectations. Look, I'm in meetings, but I'll call you back within the next 24 hours, or
Yeah.
I'm out of office today, but I've got block out tomorrow morning to return all my calls, or just giving those expectations. And I think people do in property management as well, that everyone's got a problem. They want it fixed now, but there's only so many problems and things that you can do in your day. But if there is an expectation that, you're going to get onto that maintenance for the client tomorrow, and having those, I guess, those deadlines in place and communicating them well, then that will alleviate, them having to call 10 times and then scream at you
Yeah.
down the other end. And I think people also forget, like, don't understand the value of what a property manager's role is. So I think a lot of people think it's really easy, that, you're just, renting out properties and collecting the rent, sitting back, and the money's coming into your account and you're transferring that. But there is a lot of, negotiations, and there's a lot of grey areas with legislations and laws, and, and meeting people's expectations and balancing them. And a lot of that's mentally exhausting work as well. So it's probably not that people are so busy, it's that their mental load is really a lot. And I don't think a lot of people outside of property management industry understand what that mental load can be like for everybody. And again, it's all that negative stuff too.
Yeah.
It's not like people are calling up and, giving you high fives. And the reality is, like, you might not do your job perfectly all the time, but ultimately you're collecting rent for them. You're taking a lot of mental stress and workload off the property owners.
So what do you believe is next for that property mum? Are there any exciting projects going on, or expansions on the horizon, or anything like that?
I think because I'm back in my real estate business now as well, and I've got our digital agency, I think it's just about consolidating what I've already started, the platform that I've created with that property mum. I've got a property management membership, which is basically my business inside a membership, and I do a lot of monthly trainings in there, and people have access to me pretty much one-on-one mentoring and coaching anytime they want through that membership. So it's just probably about rounding out that membership and continuing to add value inside there. And I'll keep launching my courses, that online course that I've got. And, I think one of the values of that property mum is that I'm actually also a real estate business owner. So I'm actually sharing content and value that's happening right now in the industry. I haven't
relevant.
Yeah, it's relevant. That's the word I was looking for.
Yeah.
It's relevant. It is. It's what's happening now. It's the real struggles that are happening right now. And I don't have all the answers. And I work with a lot of other experts in the industry, and I try to bring them into our community, so that, people like yourself, sharing your challenges and stuff as well. And I think even, I know I'm in Australia and you're in the UK, and I have people from the US that I connect with as well. But I think some of the struggles are universal, and it's always great to hear and learn from somebody else's struggles. You always take something away from sharing and listening to somebody else. So I'm a huge advocate of podcasts and listening to podcasts and reading books and audio books. I'm into them at the moment because I find driving in the car, I get through them so much quicker than falling asleep at nighttime in bed. I read about 3 lines and I'm asleep.
So yes. Finally, and again, thank you for coming on. For any aspiring property managers or even business owners, do you have a key piece of advice to offer them to start their journey or to navigate through maybe the first 12 months or anything like that?
The advice that I wish I had have learnt years ago, and not just for business but in life, is just learn who you are first and foremost. Really understand yourself. Go back and do some of that work on maybe some of your traumas and triggers. Do some work around your limiting self-belief. Learn what that mean inner voice is telling you that's holding you back from doing, maybe starting your own business, maybe asking for a promotion at work. Listen to that voice. And all these little things that I'm mentioning all allow you to understand who you are, what you want out of life, what life do you want to create. We all seem to go through the motions for many years, and it's not until something like we end up in hospital with a health crisis that we actually go, oh my God, something's not right in my life. I need to fix this and change it. But that change only comes from you. And then, I can give you all sorts of business advice and teachings and learnings, but once you learn and understand who you are, all the rest of that stuff will just happen naturally.
Thank you so much. How can listeners find you?
I am everywhere on social media at That Property Mum, pretty much, or Kylie Walker. Google me. I've got a website that's got heaps of free resources for property managers and business owners. Yeah, reach out, connect, DM me, email me.
Thank you again so much for making the time to do this. It's nearly 9 o'clock at night there, I think.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm going to go grab a glass of wine now.
Oh, wonderful. Go for it. Take care.
Thank you.